Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Second Gleam. And let me tell you, this is not your typical self-help book. It uses the story of Prophet Job and some really interesting analogies.
Oh, wow.
Like sin as a snake, humans as machines, even misfortunes as night visions.
Oh, okay.
That's pretty interesting.
Stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the Second Gleam is really trying to get us to think about is like how to reframe our understanding of these difficult experiences.
Yeah.
Because they're universal, right?
Yeah.
Suffering and illness are a part of the human experience.
Absolutely.
And so is how we view them and how we can use them as a catalyst
Okay.
for spiritual growth.
I'm intrigued, but also a little intimidated.
Okay.
Suffering for growth.
Break it down for me.
So one of the first things that this Second Gleam talks about is this idea that inner spiritual struggles like harboring sins or doubts can actually be more damaging
Really?
than external hardship.
More than like...
More than like a physical ailment.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because those inner wounds, if left unchecked, can lead to a weakening of faith.
Gotcha.
And this is something that's much more lasting, right? The text uses this really vivid image, and it says, if our inner being was to be turned to the outside and our outer being turned inward, we would appear with more wounds and diseases than the prophet Job.
Okay, wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like we've got all these internal wounds that we don't even see.
Exactly.
Why are those considered more dangerous, though?
Well, it comes down to this concept in Islam called divine decree.
Okay.
And it's the acceptance that God has a plan and that everything that happens to us, including suffering, is part of that plan. So when we think about physical ailments, even if they're severe, they're ultimately temporary.
Sure.
But when we allow our inner wounds to fester, they can impact our relationship with the divine.
Gotcha.
And that has consequences for our eternal life.
So it's not about like becoming a masochist, right? And like looking for suffering.
Oh, no.
It's just recognizing that when it happens, it has a purpose.
Exactly. And that purpose is purification. Is to grow closer to God. So think of it this way. We're constantly being tested. And those tests can come in the form of illness, financial hardship, relationship problems.
All kinds of things.
All kinds of things. And instead of complaining or questioning, why me? The text is encouraging us to embrace these challenges with patience.
Embrace them with patience.
Yeah.
I'll admit, patience is not my strongest virtue. What does the Second Gleam say about how to cultivate patience, especially when things are really rough?
One of the key things it talks about is that complaining actually amplifies our suffering.
Really?
It does.
Interesting.
Because when we focus on the negative, we give it power over us. The text reminds us that God is the master of all dominion and that we need to trust in his wisdom. There's a quote in the text that says, God Almighty has made the garment of the body with which he has clothed people a manifestation of his art. He is the master of all dominion and is free to operate however he wills in his dominion.
So focus on gratitude, not on the complaint.
Exactly.
It's about shifting your perspective.
It is. It is.
But I'm still trying to wrap my head around this whole transforming hardship into something positive. So that's a hard one.
Well, think about this.
Yeah.
This life, this world that we're in right now is temporary.
Right.
But our actions here have consequences in the hereafter. Which is eternal.
Yeah.
So when we endure trials with patience, it actually becomes an act of devotion, something that earns favor in the eyes of God.
It's like we're making an investment in our eternal well-being by how we handle suffering in this life.
Precisely. And the Second Gleam says, any part of the transient life that has passed in misfortune comes to be counted as an eternal, blessed life owing to the misfortune.
Okay, that's a really bold statement.
It is.
I can see how some people might have a hard time with that one, especially if they're going through something awful.
Right, but remember, it's asking us to shift our focus from that immediate pain to the potential for spiritual growth and reward. It's a pretty profound shift in perspective.
So we're not denying the pain, but we're finding meaning within it.
Absolutely. And the Second Gleam actually gives us some specific tools to help us do that.
I like it.
One of the things is this emphasis on active reliance on God.
It's active reliance mean?
It's not about passively accepting whatever hardship comes our way. It's about actively choosing to trust in God's mercy, seeking his guidance, and focusing on the present moment.
So are we not supposed to plan for the future?
It's not about ignoring potential challenges.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that worrying about the future steals our peace and depletes our capacity for patience in the present moment.
Okay.
It's like eating all day long to avoid future hunger.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
Yeah.
So it's all about balance.
Like
we can plan, but we don't have to let the anxiety control us.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So don't dwell on the past. Don't worry about the future.
Right.
Just focus on getting through today with patience and trust in God.
I love it.
Okay, good.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about inner wounds and divine decree, and cultivating patience.
Absolutely.
There's one more potentially controversial idea in the second gleam that I think we need to address.
Lay it on me.
Okay.
Hit me with it.
I'm ready.
Okay. So the second gleam suggests that illness can actually sometimes be a blessing.
Oh, I got to say, that one's a little hard to swallow.
I know, right?
Especially when you think about all the suffering that comes with illness.
Right. But remember, we're looking at this from a spiritual perspective.
Okay, true. Yeah.
So the text argues that in an age where we have so many things distracting us from our spiritual lives, illness can be this powerful wake-up call.
Oh, I see, like a cosmic tap on the shoulder.
Exactly.
To remind you of what's important.
Yeah, it can help us to reevaluate our priorities and shift our focus to what truly matters.
Okay.
And appreciate this life compared to the eternity of the hereafter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Especially for younger people who maybe haven't contemplated their mortality or their spiritual purpose as deeply.
But it still feels a little simplistic to say that, like, all illness is a blessing.
Oh, for sure. The text acknowledges that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The second gleam explicitly says that this perspective only applies when illness doesn't negatively impact a person's faith or their religious life.
Okay.
It's certainly not diminishing the real pain and suffering that people experience.
Right.
But it's offering us a way to find spiritual meaning.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Within that experience.
The second gleam uses some really vivid analogies.
Yes, it does.
To illustrate these ideas. Can we unpack a few of those?
Let's do it.
The first one that really struck me was sin as a worm that grows into a snake.
Yeah, that's a powerful image, right?
Yeah. What's your take on that?
Well, it makes me think about how easily we dismiss small transgressions.
Yeah.
You know, that tiny worm?
Like it's no big deal.
It's no big deal, exactly.
Yeah.
But the second gleam is warning us that if we don't address those worms, if we don't seek forgiveness and strive to change our ways, they can fester and grow into something far more destructive.
Like a whole nest of vipers living inside of us.
And those small sins left unchecked can turn into a venomous snake that poisons our hearts and weakens our connection to God.
So we got to be on the lookout for those little worms and nip them in the bud before they become a bigger problem.
Yeah.
What about the analogy of humans as machines?
Ooh.
Okay.
That one's interesting.
I think this one's really insightful because it acknowledges that as humans, we're designed to experience a full range of emotions and sensations.
The good and the bad.
The good and the bad, exactly.
Okay.
But each of those experiences, if we approach them with the right mindset, can deepen our relationship with God.
So we're wired for both,
Yeah.
and they both serve a purpose in our spiritual journey.
So when we experience pleasure, we're naturally inclined to feel gratitude, to acknowledge the source of that blessing.
Yeah.
And that brings us closer to God through thankfulness.
And when we experience hardship, when those suffering mechanisms, as the text calls it, are activated, we're driven to seek help, to turn to a higher power for comfort and guidance.
So it's like our very design is pushing us towards the divine, both when things are good and when things are bad.
I think that's the beauty of this analogy.
Yeah.
It highlights that interconnectedness between our human experience and our relationship with God, and that both pleasure and suffering can be opportunities for growth.
If we let them.
If we approach them with awareness and intention.
Yeah. Okay, I'm starting to see these analogies in a new light.
Good.
Okay, last one. Misfortunes as night visions.
Ooh.
This one's a bit more abstract. What's the message here?
It's all about the power of perspective.
Okay.
So imagine a night vision.
Right. Like a fleeting image in the dark.
Exactly.
Okay.
If we fixate on it, if we allow fear and anxiety to amplify it, it becomes bigger and scarier.
Like when you're a kid and you're convinced there's a monster under the bed.
Exactly.
The more you think about it,
Yeah.
the scarier it seems.
But if we choose to see that night vision for what it is,
right.
a fleeting illusion,
Yeah.
it loses its power over us.
Okay.
And the second gleam suggests that we often do this with misfortune.
We dwell on it.
We dwell on it.
Yeah.
We replay it in our minds.
Amplify it.
We amplify it, exactly.
And that just makes it worse.
It does.
So by shifting our focus,
Yes.
we can diminish its power.
That's the idea.
We're not denying that the hardship exists.
No.
But we have a choice in how we respond to it.
Exactly.
And that response should be rooted in faith and acceptance and
Yes.
trust in God's plan.
It's about surrendering to a power greater than ourselves and recognizing that even in our darkest moments,
Yeah.
there's a purpose, a
Yeah.
lesson to be learned, a path towards growth.
These analogies are so powerful.
They are.
They're not just metaphors, they're practical guides.
Yeah.
For how to approach suffering with a different mindset.
They provide a framework for understanding the potential within hardship
Mm-hmm.
and tools for transforming those experiences
Yeah.
into opportunities for spiritual growth.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Before we move on, I'd love to touch on those 5 points.
Yeah.
The second gleam outlines for enduring hardship.
Okay.
I think a quick recap will be really helpful for our listeners.
Yeah, a recap's a great idea.
Okay.
So those 5 points are, 1, recognize the significance of inner struggle.
Okay.
And this is all about remembering that those battles that we fight within ourselves, those wounds that are caused by sin and doubt,
Right.
can be even more detrimental than external trials.
Okay.
So it's a call to prioritize our spiritual well-being.
Inner work.
Inner work, exactly.
Content number 2.
Number 2, embrace the reality of divine decree.
Ooh, that's a big one.
It is.
Okay.
And this is about accepting God's will,
Okay.
understanding that everything, including suffering,
Yeah.
is part of a bigger plan that we may not fully comprehend in this lifetime.
Right.
Okay, number 3,
I'm ready.
turn to God in both gratitude and supplication.
So we're talking about prayer here.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
good. Yeah, okay.
And it's recognizing that both joy and sorrow can deepen our connection with the divine.
Okay.
So we're encouraged to express gratitude for our blessings,
Right.
but also to seek help in times of need.
Right. So God is there for the good times and the bad times.
He is there through it all.
Gotcha.
Okay, number 4,
Okay.
focus on the present moment.
Okay.
So this is all about not dwelling on past misfortunes
Yeah.
or anxieties about the future,
Right.
but really harnessing that power of patience
Okay.
to deal with the present challenges.
Be here now.
Be here now, exactly.
I like it.
And finally, number 5,
Okay.
seek spiritual growth through hardship.
This is a big one.
It is a big one.
Because it's like totally reframing how we view suffering.
Right, it's not a punishment. It's an opportunity.
Yeah. Use it as fuel.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's encouraging us to use these experiences to purify ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
seek God's forgiveness,
Right.
and emerge stronger in our faith.
Man, those 5 points are really good.
They're a great distillation of the Second Gleam's
Yeah.
core message.
It's not just surviving hardship, it's thriving
It is.
through hardship.
It's about utilizing it.
The Second Gleam uses some really impactful quotes
Yeah.
to get these ideas across. Can we hear some of those?
Let's do it.
Because sometimes just a single sentence
Yes.
can have such a profound impact.
One of the most well-known is Prophet Job's prayer.
Okay.
Truly, affliction has visited me, and you are the most merciful of the merciful.
Such a simple prayer, but so powerful. What
Yeah.
makes it so significant?
Well, notice how Job doesn't demand relief.
He's just acknowledging.
He's acknowledging it,
Yeah.
but he's also reaffirming his faith
Mm,
in God's mercy.
okay.
So it's a model of humble supplication, a reminder that even in our darkest moments,
Yeah.
we can turn to a higher power for strength and solace.
And that applies to any kind of hardship, right?
Any kind of hardship.
Not just illness,
Loss of a loved one.
financial problem.
Yeah. Emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
Anything you're going through.
What other gems does the Second Gleam have?
Okay, how about this one?
Okay.
Just as a tree drops its ripe fruit when shaken, so too do sins fall away through the shivering of a fever.
Whoa! Whoa, what a visual.
Right.
So what's the deeper meaning there?
It's about the transformative potential of hardship.
Okay.
That shaking of a fever, or any other trial for that matter,
Yeah.
can actually cleanse us,
Ooh, I like that.
purifying us from the weight of our sins.
It's like it's shaking loose the things that are no longer serving us,
Exactly.
letting go of those burdens.
So we can emerge lighter, more connected to God.
Okay.
Ties back to that idea that illness can be a form of divine favor,
Yeah.
prompting us to reevaluate our lives and turn towards a path of spiritual growth.
Okay, this next quote really stopped me in my tracks.
Okay.
If you have found the one who makes you suffer, then know that misfortune is a gift that brings peace and happiness.
That's a powerful one.
Talk about a paradox.
It is a paradox.
How can suffering be a gift?
Well, this quote really gets to the heart of the Second Gleam's message.
Okay.
It's about changing our perspective on hardship.
Okay.
When we recognize that God is the source of all things,
Yeah.
both good and bad, even suffering
Right.
can be seen as a path towards something greater.
But that takes a lot of faith, doesn't it?
It does.
To see the gift in the pain.
It takes a lot of surrender.
Yeah.
Trusting in God's plan.
Even when we don't understand.
Even when we don't get it.
Okay.
But when we can view hardship through this lens,
Yeah.
when we see it as an opportunity to draw closer to God, to develop patience, to purify ourselves.
It can actually lead to peace. Happiness.
Even happiness, yes.
So it's not about seeking out suffering, but it's about recognizing the potential within it, allowing it to shape us in a positive way.
Finding meaning and purpose within the pain.
Yeah.
Trusting that God can use those experiences for our ultimate good, both in this life and the next.
We've explored some deep stuff today.
We have.
Unpacked some really challenging, but also really empowering ideas.
It's about shifting that perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
Before we wrap up,
Yeah.
can we just distill the Second Gleam's message into some key takeaways?
Of course. So here are a few things to remember. Cultivate patience and acceptance in the face of hardship.
Turn to God in both gratitude
Yes.
and supplication.
See hardship as a potential opportunity for spiritual growth and purification.
Remember, this world is temporary.
Yeah.
And our actions here
Have consequences in the hereafter.
and trust in God's mercy. And focus on the present moment.
Powerful reminders.
So powerful.
Especially when we're navigating those difficult times.
Absolutely. Before we go, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought from the Second Gleam.
Okay.
This idea of negative worship.
Ooh, I like this one.
It's about recognizing our helplessness in the face of hardship.
Yeah.
And turning to God with complete sincerity.
It's a powerful concept, right? It begs the question.
Yeah.
How can we cultivate this kind of authentic, heartfelt connection with a higher power?
Especially when we're struggling.
Especially when we're struggling.
Yeah, that's a question worth pondering.
It is.
And as you continue to explore these ideas, remember those vivid analogies we talked about.
Right.
The worm and the snake, the human machine misfortunes as night visions. Think about how shifting your perspective on hardship might impact your own journey.
And remember, even in the darkest of times,
Yeah.
there's always a glimmer of hope.
A chance for growth.
A chance for growth.
A path towards deeper meaning.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.